Good morning. My name is Kurt Bell. I'm the host of Freeway Bible Study, a daily chapter-by-chapter walk through the Bible from Genesis through Revelation. We're currently on Genesis 14. This is the Abram rescues Lot. And let's go ahead and get started. Hold on, let me just get the bike all ready to go here. I think I got everything in order. Looking good, everything's secure. Oh, let me put my flap in, my little jacket flap. If I don't tuck it in, it'll flap all the way through the the video. You guys will hear it, but I won't hear it. Okay, here we go. Okay, now in like I said, my name's Kurt, and I am a non-believer. I don't believe in any gods. So I am an atheist, yet I enjoy studying religion, and I'm currently engaged in making a thorough pass through the Bible to make sure that I at least understand, or I'm well acquainted with the foundational text of a religion that I don't, how do you say it just right? Of a religion that purports the existence of a God that I don't believe is out there. So this exercise is not necessarily an aggressive, one where I'm looking for holes in the text. That's not the ambition, although I will point those out if I see them. Instead, what I'm trying to do is really just understand it. So it's more like a literary criticism, but without a lot of scholarly background. I'm not a literary critic. So it's an amateur armchair analysis. So enough preamble, let's get to it. So it's just a little brief summary of where we were in the last chapter in Genesis 13. Here we go. Abram, we're following at this point the course of Abram, later Abraham, and his family, including Lot, as they adventure around the Holy Land and the land of Egypt to find a home and a safe place to call their own. And in the last chapter 13, Lot and Abram had made their way out of Egypt after becoming quite wealthy there, along with everything that they have. They brought it with them. And they had separated at Bethel, which is on the coast there in the southern, well, I guess it would be southern Israel now, right? And they went their separate ways. Lot choosing the plain of Jordan, which is actually, 25 to 50 miles east across the desert where the Tigris and Euphrates are, the rivers. And Lot goes on and pitches his tent near Sodom, a place that we all know. And Abram moves on into Canaan and settles there, where God reestablishes his covenant. So that's what brought us here to chapter 14. Now in chapter 14, we learn a little bit about, we know that the land where they're settling, the land of Canaan, is settled with the Canaanites, and there's another group mentioned in chapter 13, sorry. There's another group, the Aboriginal people are there also. But we also learn that there's a lot of tribalism. Now in 14, the book opens right away. And I knew I was going to forget his name. Kezabar? It's a very hard name. There's a warlord. There's lots of tribes. And I'll come back and talk for a second about what I think a tribe means at this time. Oh, I really wanted to remember his name. Hold on just a second. Let's see if I can just bring it up real quick here. Hold on. Bear with me. Khedorlaomer. That's it. Khedorlaomer. Okay, I actually brought up, I've still had the Bible app here on my phone, so I just brought it up and turned it on. I remembered that they mentioned the name of the king right off the bat. So Khedorlaomer. It's confusing because the name starts with a K. I was really struggling before I listened to it the first time. I was like, okay, so Khedorlaomer is, and I tried to remind myself as I was walking toward the bike to start this. I said, okay, Kurt, open with Khedorlaomer. Say right off the bat, the name to remember is Khedorlaomer, and I forgot to say that, so I lost it. So I'm sorry I had to kind of do that reminder thingy. I try to avoid that. I try to, with these studies, I want to make this really off-the-cuff remembrance, but I want to remember that name. Okay, so let's kind of rewind a little bit back to where we were. So here we are in the Valley of Jordan, and Jordan kind of up to the north, and we're Sodom and Gomorrah, and then down to the south is Canaan, which I'm thinking that, you know, Sodom and Gomorrah are also in Canaan, but in chapter 13 it specifically calls out Canaan as the place where Abram is headed. So, but I think they're one and the same. I think it's all one area, and it's kind of a, if we were to use an analogy here in Los Angeles, what we would think of as the prime real estate of the Holy Land, you know, Bethel and places like that, that would be, if it was Los Angeles, that would be like Santa Monica, you know, Redondo Beach, Torrance, stuff like that. Maybe, you know, Westwood, a little bit out there, and then I think the River Jordan would kind of be the outlying area of that, kind of the more desirable areas, and then out further into the desert, so to speak, because it's kind of a watered area, so I don't know how deserty it really is. What's that? There's lights on that building there. Look at that. Do you see that? Looks like there's an emergency flashers going. Definitely something going on over there. Not sure. Anyway, a little further inland, that's where Canaan is, and I think that would be equivalent to like the Inland Empire here in Los Angeles, which is a less, you know, at least in terms of real estate, it's a less desirable place to live. I mean, real estate's a lot cheaper. You don't get the nice coastal air, and it's I don't mean to put it down, but I think you get the meaning, right? I mean, we tend to the coastal areas tend to be more desirable, and I think when we typically think of the Holy Land, I think we're mostly in our minds, we're imagining the kind of the coastal areas, or within like 20 miles of the coast. And then when we're thinking of we don't really think so much about the land further to the east, which is, if you go far enough out, that's out there in the wilderness where Moses is wandering around. And I'm wondering now if when isn't it Samuel who finally inherits the Holy Land, you know, the promised land, after, because Noah was denied it for his generation's sins. Was it Samuel, or no, Joshua, who finally, I think it was Joshua who finally get it. Was he coming over the mountains from the Far East into the land of Canaan? Maybe. Now I'm totally speculating right now. I'm trying. The whole map is starting to congeal in my head, and it may be congealing incorrectly. I'll have to do some further study. But anyway, that land out there, the Canaan, is about, depending on mileage and where it starts and ends, about 25, 50 miles east of the eastern edge of the Mediterranean. And that's where they are. That's where all this is taking place. Now out there, the Canaanites are out there, that kind of Aboriginal tribe are out there, and like I said, it's probably not the most desirable place, although maybe it is, given that it's got the Tigris and the Euphrates, and these are certainly agricultural people, so maybe it's a flip, right? Maybe that's like the most desirable place, and the place by the coast is crap, because it's probably less water. I mean, you got the puny little Jordan, which you can walk across in the summer months, right? I've got a friend from Israel who was telling me that you could just walk across the Jordan. And maybe that's the case, but anyway, I diverge. I digress. So we've got the out there in Canaan, you know, all the way up from Sodom and Gomorrah to the north, and there's some hills up there, and way down into the south, where Abram has his thing going on, and these guys are getting pretty settled in. And by now, Lot, I don't know, it doesn't tell us how much time has passed, but by now Lot is living in Sodom. Now he's And he's still got all of his stuff, because we learn later about his stuff and all of his people and his women later in this chapter. So there's Lot, and then further down south there's Abram. They're doing their thing, and of course there's no internet or phone line, so they really don't know what which other are doing. But we do now learn about a little bit about the politics of the area. And this is where I put the pin in earlier about talking about the kings, right? I mean, what it means to be a king. There are... Oh, no, I forgot his name again. Hold on. Let me try that again. Hold on. No, not Chinab. Not... Hold on. Okay, just a second, please. Hold on. There it is, Khedorlaomer. That's the name to remember, okay? If there's anything I'm going to pull out of this chapter for long-term memory, it's Khedorlaomer and the nature of kings in that time, because that's very interesting. Khedorlaomer with a K. So, the Valley of Jordan at this time is fragmented. There are lots of little groups. I mean, it looks like I count at least 9 in the area of Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, I don't list them explicitly in this chapter. There are 4 kingdoms right around Sodom and Gomorrah, and no, 4 kingdoms is in the surrounding area. I don't know exactly where, but somewhere in the surrounding area. And then there are 5 kingdoms right around Sodom and Gomorrah. And these are kingdoms. So it must not be anything like what we think of a kingdom now. Now we think of a kingdom, we think of a nation state. You know, we think of a strong man, with a court of dozens and an army of thousands or tens of thousands, and a nation state, as big as at least Rhode Island. Now, kingdom back then can't be anything like that, because we're going to learn later that Abram, who's going to come to the rescue in this story, Abram will defeat the 5 kingdoms that are aligned against Sodom and Gomorrah. He will defeat all 5 of them. And Khedorlaomer, here I got it. He will defeat all 5 of them with an army of 380 men, 80-ish, something like that. That not only that, but they're divided, and at night. And he's going to defeat all of them. So that means that so back to the point. The point is that when we're hearing about kings, because there's the king of this, the king of that, and Khedorlaomer is the boss of them all, at least the ones outside Sodom and Gomorrah. These are not big groups. I mean, they can't be more than 100 or 200 each in their little army. So when Khedorlaomer, what happened was this. Khedorlaomer and his allies outside Sodom and Gomorrah had for the past 13 years had subjugated the 5 kings around Sodom and Gomorrah and in that area. So there's been a subjugation going on, and they've been paying tribute perhaps and all that stuff. And in the 13th year, 12 years that was going on, 13th year, the kings of around Sodom and Gomorrah said, screw that, we're we're rebelling. And they said they basically walked out of that deal. Now, it takes time to react back in the old days. So in the 14th year, it took him a year, Khedorlaomer, he arranges a raise, and I may be getting the 4 kings backwards. I can't remember if there was 5 on one side and 4 on the other. I'm pretty sure there was 5 on the side of Sodom and Gomorrah and 4 kings on the side of Khedorlaomer. Khedorlaomer arranges for himself and the 3 other kings some armies. And like I said, it can't be more than 500, and certainly no more than 1,000. Although if you remember that Abram's got God on his side, then maybe that's a little bit different. But then God was also on the side of the kings in Sodom and Gomorrah, but they were wicked, so maybe God withheld his strength. I don't know. Anyway, so Khedorlaomer comes down and his gang come down to the area around Sodom and Gomorrah, and they defeat them. And Lot is amongst that group, and when they're fleeing, the kings of around Sodom and Gomorrah, they flee into the hills. They go through an area that's got a lot of tar pits. Well, in the King James edition, they call it slime pits, whatever that is. But then it's better clarified in the New International Version as tar pits. It's interesting again to read the differences in these two. They vary quite widely, even insofar as the names of the kings, the titles. I mean, in the one case, the king is not even given the name of his country. He's just called King of Nations. Kind of seems like some interesting liberties. So, and again, I won't go there. I'm diverging too far. So, okay, so Khedorlaomer comes along and look, I've got it. So I guess it was worth it to rewind a couple of times. Khedorlaomer he's routed the Sodom and Gomorrah kings and their men. They're fleeing. Some of them get stuck in the tar or slime pits. I think that's to the north. And the rest flee into the hills. And it looks like the king of Sodom was amongst the ones that fled into the hills, because we're going to see him a little later. He wasn't among the captives. Khedorlaomer then take the remaining men and the women and the kids captives, as well as gets all the booty from Sodom and Gomorrah and all the other cities and camps along the way. And he starts to return home with that, which sounds like he's going south, because he's going to run into Abram, or Abram's going to pursue him. So maybe Abram pursued him wherever he went. So and they also pick up Lot along the way. I guess Lot maybe wasn't a fighter, or he's probably an older man or whatever. But Lot's got some sons. Lot's got daughters. That's right. Of course. How can we forget? How the heck can I possibly confuse the fact that Lot has daughters with Lot has sons? Because his daughters will play figure importantly in just a while. So anyway, so imagine Khedorlaomer and the other kings. Now that's important, because what's going to happen next, we could excuse it if we think that Khedorlaomer has separated from the other kings in his pact, his whatever we call it, the alliance. But they're still with him, because it says that explicitly in just a minute. They're heading away with all their booty, and the king of Sodom and a few other kings are hiding up there in the hills. They're probably starting to come out back to their cities, which are looted. All the stuff's gone. But one of the people that escaped, instead of heading to the hills with all the other Sodomites and Gomorrites and the other those five kingdoms, he goes down to the area where Abram lives. Now, there's a king down there that is friendly with Abram. Abram's done well. He's well settled. He's got his buddy is a king. I mean, I guess Abram, would be, even though he's not regarded as a king, I mean, he would factor in as a king, especially given the command he has of 380-ish men who aren't actually soldiers, it sounds like. They're trained servants. So are they slaves that simply know how to wield a sword? Do you want to give those guys swords? I don't know. Different time. And different alliance. I mean we'll come to this later when we get further along into Leviticus and Deuteronomy, when we talk about the definition of a slave. But anyway, I'm getting way ahead of myself. So anyway, so here we go. So Khedorlaomer is he's heading out with all of his goodies. Life's good, and he's got the other kings with him. And Abram hears what happens, and in particular, he learns that Khedorlaomer has got Lot, and probably Lot's family, of course. And he says, and all Lot's goodies. And he says, I'm going after him. So he takes his 380 trained servants and arms them, and they head out, and they're going off in pursuit of Khedorlaomer and his alliance. Now, so this is one man, not even a king, with 380 ostensibly slaves that have some training in arms, and they're heading after the entire army of Khedorlaomer, the alliance of Khedorlaomer, which just kicked the butt out of Sodom and Gomorrah, the five kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, and routed them entirely. Sounds like a suicide mission. If to me, that'd make a good story, right? Better than 300, maybe. To heck with going after, Xerxes one Greek, phalanx, or one small Greek army of 300 going after the entire army of the god King Xerxes. Let's talk about Abram with his 380 going after, hey, there's the movie right there. Instead of 300, 380 going after Chedorlaomer. Oh, now I'm losing it. Chedorlaomer and his armies, his alliance. Anyway, I'm being long-winded. They catch up, and at night, Chedorlaomer. Come on, Kurt, don't forget it. It's tough getting old. So at night, Abram catches up. So I'm imagining them kind of sneaking up, and their scouts have figured Khedorlaomer and his camp are ahead. I don't know why they're keeping Lot alive. Usually back in those days, they would kill all the, able-bodied men, just keep the women, the children. And, they were lucky even if they did that. They kept the women and children too, as we'll see later. Wow. That just had a little side thought. We're going to see in a few chapters that, there's wholesale slaughter. These same people, the descendants of Abram, when they go out and they ransack cities, they don't leave nothing alive. They don't even, the suckling babes and the animals. And we're going to see one chapter, I think it's in Joshua, 1 Samuel, where God gets pretty pissed that they actually kept the animals alive. And could it be then that the host of Khedorlaomer, if I'm pronouncing it right now, are in a way more civilized? That's a digressive thought. So anyway, so they caught up. Abram's back there with his 380, and he says, okay guys, okay men, here's what we're going to do. Well, so what's 380 divided by 2? That'd be 150, 65, what would it be, 165? Something like that. 165, half of you go to the left, half of you go to the right. We've revisited this left and right theme before. He didn't actually say that, but he says they split up the camp, split up the army, and we're gonna take these guys under the cover of darkness. And that's exactly what they do. And guess what? They utterly destroy them. And this is the section where the Bible specifically says that Khedorlaomer is there with the other 3 kings. The whole host is there, and they are defeated. It doesn't get into too much detail about how deep that defeat was, but did they actually catch Khedorlaomer and the other kings and take their heads? We don't know, but they're defeated. So now, fast forward, victory parade back to Sodom and Gomorrah, particularly Sodom, and Abram arrives back. He's got Lot's family, he's got all of Lot's stuff, and they're coming back, and the kings of Sodom and a couple of other kings that had gone to the hills, hide in the hills, are coming out of the hills. And one king who happens to be a priest of the one true God, which I guess means that he's of a like mind of Abram, right? He's not worshiping Baal, which is the god of, or one of the gods of, the god of thunder in particular, of the Canaanites. But this one king comes out and issues kind of a blessing and a prayer. I can't quite remember. It was only 4 lines, but it was very, very succinct and very nice. And Abram, says, "Wow, that's really nice." And he with a wave of the hand, he gives him 10% share of everything, all the spoils that he brought back. So he's kind of dispensing the wealth that he brought back that he recovered from Khedorlaomer. And so this one king is like, "Whoa, yeah, all right, awesome." And next comes up the king of Sodom, who had survived. And the king of Sodom is so grateful to Abram. And he says to him, "I don't want any of the goods back. Just give me my people back," which seems very generous. Very benevolent. After all, Abram risked everything to bring it back. This king of Sodom had lost everything. He had a peopleless city and a goodless city. It was just infrastructure. And Abram, in an interesting thing, Abram says, "I will not keep," and he says it's kind of a lyrical, poetic words. "I will not take a single thing from you, not even in the King James edition it says the lace of a shoe, and in the New International Version it says the strap of a sandal. I will not even take something as little as that." Anybody has a reason It says, lest it be said that the king of Sodom had made Abram rich. So he wants to keep up appearances. He's a self-made man after all. Well, kind of self-made. He kind of took advantage of the Egyptians, right? And maybe he did. He lied his way into wealth in Egypt. So he doesn't want to do that. So he says, all I require is the food that my men ate and the goods that were previously owned by my men. And by my men, I assume he means Lot in particular and others. So he returns both the people and the goods to all of the 5 kings, assuming they're all still alive, of that area around Sodom and Gomorrah. And that's the end of the chapter. So what I took away from this was a couple of things. One, a new name, Khedorlaomer, which is like the warlord of the area. And I don't know why I'm so hooked on that name. I think it's mainly because of the next point, which is that I really learned that a king wasn't what I thought a king meant. Like I said before, I thought a king was King Arthur. But clearly here a king is more like a strong man, and a very regional strong man. I mean, because if Abram was able to kick the whole entire host of Khedorlaomer with 380-ish men divided in 2, so 165 or so on each side, and they kicked their butt. Sure, they took them by night, and sure they had gods on their, they had Yahweh on their side, so that's a lot, right? But that means that, and those guys kicked the 5 kings of Sodom and Gomorrah's butts. That means that we're not talking about big groups. These are small groups. I mean, a village might be a king, or the leader, the strong man of a couple of villages might be considered a king. I'm thinking more like, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful, but I mean, I'm just trying to straining to find an analogy, more like maybe like a gang leader. The Crips and the Bloods. You got your posse. You got a couple lieutenants. You got your foot soldiers, and you put them all together, and they come together, and you got what would that be? West Side Story. West Side Story of the Jordan Valley. So I've rethought what it means to be king. And I've learned a new name, Khedorlaomer, and now we understand now that Abram at this point must be very well established, and Lot too, very well established in the watered, beautiful, green plains of Jordan. And it's a wonder now that I don't know. I'm just going to leave off there. Maybe it's not a wonder. Because we know that bad things are in store for Sodom and Gomorrah and the peoples of the area. But we'll leave that for next time. For now, thank you for joining me for another reading of the Bible. This was chapter 14. Abram rescues Lot. Until tomorrow, make it a good life. Take care.